let's begin with why the amendments. We've been looking at all the details of the case, trying to understand what's really happening. Is there politics involved in this, or are we looking at uh, real strong reasons why there have been amendments made to the indictment in the insurrection case of January 6th?
Well, it's great always to be with you again, Geeta, and it's a very good question. I think that anytime you're talking about a prosecution of a former president who's also the nominee of one of the two major parties, politics can't be entirely separated from any aspect of the process. But Jack Smith, who is the special prosecutor who's handling the prosecutions both of the classified documents case and of the insurrection and election interference case related to January 6th in 2021, he is the special prosecutor. And this act of amending the indictment, a so-called superseding indictment, which is just a fancy phrase for a replacement, an additional indictment in place of the earlier one. It is mostly a legal decision rather than a political decision. And what he's doing is he's replaced the initial indictment with this new indictment because the Supreme Court on July 1 ruled that the president, or the former president in this instance, was immune from from prosecution for certain activity. And so he's had to circumscribe, he being Jack Smith, circumscribe and cut out some of the material that was in the initial indictment. What we have now is a more focused indictment of the president, the former president, but it does remove some of the key evidence that would have been useful to the prosecution if Mr. Trump were to actually face a trial in the January 6th insurrection case.
Well, that's very, very interesting, Professor. But then again, in terms of process, the fact that it's more focused, the fact that the amendments have changed a lot of things and are now aligned with what the Supreme Court ruling really was, what does this mean for the process itself? Will that be, will the pace of this indictment and the judicial process really be faster now, or will it take its own course and let the elections of the November 5th follow through before we can actually see some ruling on this matter? Because we'll go to the other one, which is on the 17th of September. But on this case, do you think it'll be after the 5th of November, or is a focused, more amended indictment really going to take it through to sentencing or trial or whatever that may be before the 5th of November?
Really good question. And Geeta, I think that the answer is next week, Judge Chutkan, who is the trial court judge in the January 6th case, is holding a hearing, and she's going to decide how she wishes to proceed with respect to the very, very difficult task that the Supreme Court has handed to her, and that's figuring out every single granular piece of evidence in the indictment or allegations in the indictment, whether it qualifies as immune from prosecution or not immune, in which case it can be part of a case. There is no chance, I think, unfortunately, there's no chance that this will be tried in any meaningful way prior to the election in November. But if Judge Chutkan chooses to have what it would be known as a pre-trial evidentiary hearing, that would be fairly damaging for Mr. Trump, because it would shift the focus from his campaign to what he did or didn't do in January of 2021 and in December of 2020. So this case will not be tried before the election, and that is really the biggest win that Mr. Trump has had. The same is true with the classified document. The two federal cases, as well as the Georgia case that he's facing, his strategy has not been to defend his conduct on the merits, but has rather been to delay. His real goal is to win the election, because if he wins the election, then as president, he will be in charge of the Department of Justice, the federal cases, and he will dismiss them. He'll drop them. It's a rare power that you have. And up until July 1, presidents never had this immunity before. This is a new development, and I would argue not a positive development for the United States in terms of the rule of law. But to be able to delay the process the way he has, to be able to carve out acts as immune even when he was breaking the law, and then potentially to be in a position to drop the case against yourself, that's a combination of powers that not many criminal defendants have in history have ever had.
Professor Sample, thank you so much for joining us. That's Professor James Sample from Hofstra Law School, joining us to explain to us what's really happening in the United States of America. How much of a trouble is Donald Trump really in, and will that impact his presidential run? As also, should he win the presidency, will he continue or will he be able to run the country as president? Thank you so much for joining us over here on India Today.